Welcome to the ADID Summit. We're really pleased to have you all be a part of this experience. I'm now going to turn it over to our moderator for today, Dr. Renee Miles Payne, Director of Athletics at Fort Valley State University and first Vice President of MOA. Renee.
Good morning. I was talking to Reagan Hill over there just a minute ago, and 30 days on the job as the athletic director, and my pants are sagging. So that means I'm running, doing a lot of good things. So thank you all for the invitation, and also for all of you being here. The ADID designation is one that I also had while I was at the University of Miami as the Chief Diversity Officer, and of course we know some of the things that's happening in the state of Florida. There was no longer a need for my role, so my role was eliminated. So with this discussion that we're having today is very apropos to why maximizing that role for you in your on your campuses and your institution is going to be a real thing. And so I'm happy to have my guest panelists here today with us, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but then also allow them to get into the discussion, on the jump with asking the first question. So we're going to introduce ourselves and then also talk to me and to the group about your interaction with the ADID within the conference office or on your campuses. So Marshall, you'll go first.
Good morning. My name is Marshall Fay. I'm the Assistant Commissioner for External Relations at the Mid-America Intercollegiate Athletics Association. We're a Division II athletics conference based in Kansas City, Missouri. My role as the ADID, I also serve on the MOIC, which I was appointed to this year, which I'm very excited to get started in the conversation with that. But one of the roles that I took on with the ADID role was really trying to bring our conference ADID designees together. Really, the first time that I sent out the mass email, I got like 3 back saying I didn't even know I was the ADID. I have two head coaches within my conference that are ADIDs, and really we're still at the very, very early grassroots. This was about a year ago. We've had 2 meetings. We've had some people come in and out of the conference with that designation. So for us, we're still kind of learning, and events like this are great because that means I can take information back to our campuses, to our designees, and hit both the athletics and academic side. So this, for me, is really, really exciting to be a part of.
Sean?
Thank you, Dr. Miles. Again, my name is Sean Frazier. I'm the Vice President and Director of Athletics at Northern Illinois University. I'm a little old here, so I'm trying to process the interaction. My ADID, as well as a number of other designations, fully aware of the process. We actually have a pretty robust diversity, equity, and inclusion office. So some of this is some redundancy for the campus as well as for the athletic department, but the interactions that we try to propel is about having a seamless shared agenda for the campus as well as the athletic department. So we have a number of designations, and I've got my Senior Associate Director of Athletics here, Courtney Vincent, who oversees a lot of our diversity integration group. She does a fantastic job with leading our efforts, but also being our liaison to campus. We see this as a shared agenda. I'm also, the chair of our Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Search Committee, because I just lost my CDO. So if folks are interested in those types of conversations, I'm here for that as well. I'm in the process. But again, we see this as an important role, but we also see this as a role that is not an illusion, not more of an illusion of inclusion, but more of advancing and putting a portfolio together that has a decision-making process. So I'll hold it there, and we'll go from there.
Allison.
My name is Allison Kern. I'm the Associate Vice President and Director of Athletics at Cal State East Bay, which is a Division II school. There we go. Which is a Division II school in the Bay Area of California. Right now, we don't have an ADID. The reason for that is I am about 18 months in on the job. Our president just hired our first CDO on campus in a cabinet position. So we're really looking to, as we hire a few more people in athletics and kind of reorg, a little bit like Sean said, integrate that position into what I consider to be a decision-making space where we're building culture and not just a designation to check a box. So we're looking to be a lot more integrated with our campus and how we're building out the culture of inclusion and what that looks like with our programming for student athletes right now.
Well, thank you all. So we'll jump into some questions here, but this session is about maximizing the position. And so while you're sitting at your seats, I also want you to visualize the things you've heard over the last day, but then also kind of visualize where you would actually want it, what you want it to look like. And actually write those things down, because sometimes there may be things you can pick out, share with your athletic director or whomever you are reporting to get some leeway to do some things that you may want to do. So it's not that you just have to be pigeonholed into one space. There may be things across the entire athletic department where you fit, or things or ideas that you have about ticket sales. How do we hit another market, from a ticket sales? That's revenue. So you think of the role in not just ways of the educational pieces, but also ways that you can maximize it from a revenue generating way. Make it economically sound for your job not to be eliminated. That's also how you have to think more broadly about the designation in and of itself. So I'm going to start with Sean in the way of thinking about how not to pigeonhole that position or that designation. I'm sorry, it is not a position, it is a designation. How do you not get pigeonholed or tokenized in that role?
No problem. I will try. It's interesting because these designations, even going back to the Senior Women's Administrator, were all created for inclusion, to increase numbers, to make sure that there was equity as a part of the process. I think what ends up happening with a designation such as this is that it's very quick to be able to, have a person to deal with all the crisis situations, maybe some onboarding, maybe some recruitment. But what ends up happening is it becomes a heavy lift for an individual without a portfolio to be able to make key decision-making process. So I look at it from a senior staff standpoint. Everyone's responsibility on my team is diversity, equity, inclusion, and most importantly, belonging. So that's the way it should be. And I think the designation, which is important, is to make sure that there's an inclusive culture, right? At the end of the day, human rights, inclusive culture, making sure that folks see themselves in any plan, process, or decision. But I think it's really key to have this component of portfolio that actually has decision-making authority. What ends up happening is that when you have a designation, people see that, well, that's nice, okay, but what is your overall responsibility or portfolio to be able to interact and facilitate a particular decision-making process? So ultimately, as a young administrator, I had multiple designations, and it was great to be at the table, okay? My father always said, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, right? So it's so important to make sure you're around the table. But then when you're at the table, having your voice heard, and then having the components of decision-making and responsibilities be a part of that process. So I see, and I might have gone too long, and it's okay, give me the old hook, but the ADID is really important to make sure that it's a part of the culture, but also, too, it has a significant role in decision-making, especially when we start talking about hiring, we're talking about programming, we're talking about visibility, we're talking about connectedness with our communities. Those are important components instead of just saying, okay, you are this, good luck, I hope that works for you. So that's my thoughts.
Talk back to us, because again, this is going to be conversational. We're not saying we're the experts. So who maybe, raise your hand if you kind of feel like you're in a position where you're kind of pigeonholed or feeling like you're not able to move forward. I mean, if you're raising your hand being recorded, that's one thing. If you want to say something, then think about what you're going to say. But anybody, yeah, I don't, if you want to share, great.
I think my concern is that usually
Good question. Good question. Allison, you want to take that?
Sure. So I think that the question was, as you continue to elevate your competence in that space around, we call it JEDI, but in your ADID designation, then kind of continues to narrow that lane as you escalate your career. I would say I think part of it is the way that you're able to use that, if you feel very supported, to get yourself in other rooms or get yourself at other tables. So an ADID designation, a little bit like the SWA was supposed to, and Sean spoke to this, right? When that was created, there was some expectations around, well, if you're the SWA, you should be involved with the budget, or if you should be involved in these spaces, so that we're intentional about it. But the value being created now on campuses and the integration with a department, no matter which side of campus you're on, is how can you leverage that designation to get yourself in spaces where we're not represented yet? Can you get yourself at, right, the CDO search table? Can you get yourself at the outreach table for advancement? So, right, the dovetailing of it's important everywhere. And so if we're talking about building that into our campus or into our culture, then that voice is always important at the table. But finding a way to use that elevation to get yourself in new spaces, I think creates that. And it also creates exposure for you, right? The more people that know you and know that you're competent, the better off you are.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
I'll just add really quickly. So I'm a part of Black faculty and staff. I'm the vice chair of Black faculty and staff. One of the things that we're always talking about is how we don't have representation in Black faculty and staff from athletics, right? And because they're so siloed, right? But they need that kind of affinity and support in the same way. And we create this sort of like secret network of movement across campus that is almost subversive. So it's not, like, you don't have to necessarily be a part of these formalized structures in order to create change. Those kinds of affinity groups is a very informal way to get into those rooms and those spaces.
Absolutely. Those are good points. Anybody else a member of NATAHE? No one? A couple of people back there? I think that's another space that the ADIDs here in the NCAA need to connect with that group. I did a presentation with NATAHE last year at their convention. Was it in Phoenix, I think? And they are very like, wow, we didn't know that this was something happening at the NCAA level. How do we partner? How do we do more? And I know the NCAA has met with them before, but their tool that they have is just amazing. And I'd used it, in 2012 when I first started doing this work, but brought it back, identified the spaces where it fit and was congruent with athletics. And it made things go much smoother because now you have an actual document. I think it's $125 a year or whatever to join that organization. I would encourage you, if you are not a member of NATAHE, to join that organization and get more involved in what they're doing, because they were doing it before most of us in the room were doing it. Let's be honest. We got these designations because of legislation. None of our athletic departments were probably doing this work specifically in their department. Some were, but not a whole lot. So make sure you join that organization or go on their website and pull some of the information that they have, because it would be very helpful for you. I have 3 questions and one all the way in the back. Yes. It's the National Association of Diversity Higher Ed, Officers of Higher Ed. So NADOHE. Yeah, National Association of Diversity Officers in Higher Education. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to add to what she was saying about Black faculty or Black, I forget exactly, the athletic departments are getting involved. So the school that I work at, I'm in a conference where we've actually coined, we don't call them PWIs, we call them OWIs. Overwhelmingly white institutions.
New one.
But the thing is, though, is that within our athletic departments, first of all, most of us in our schools are actually faculty. But the thing is there are not many of us, period, of within the conference. We work together. Our ADIDs are together. Listen, when I play her team in football, I want to kick her team's ass. But when it comes to the DEI work, she's my teammate.
Absolutely.
We share resources, we share stuff, we support each other. We've done that with our coaches as well, because there's going to be certain situations, depending upon where your school or conference, where you may not have all those people. Or, let's just be honest, coaches of color, what they're getting asked to do and what they're doing, I understand why a lot of times they're silent. They're trying to keep their jobs till they have things that they have to do. So if you can make those connections within your conference, and at the higher levels, if you have people in those conferences, you know, and you're like the ADID for that conference, and our conference has done a tremendous job, there can be real community and support that can help, that creates like this, but even in the smaller, a good silo, because you know what your conference is about, like-minded schools, and you can really build and work together and support each other.
Absolutely. Thank you for those comments. So, Marshall, and from the conference office level, where do you see the ADID truly making more impact from the conference office level throughout the institutions within the conference?
So this conversation first started about a year ago or so. I had a Title IX diversity DEI coordinator on campus email my commissioner and said, hey, we would love to be able to bring, just like we do with our coaches and our administrators, have a conference office type liaison who can help coordinate and organize our ADIDs. And that really got the ball rolling. This was sometimes it takes a call to the commissioner, and then things get started to roll downhill from there. And we ended up kind of pulling and making sure that we got all our ADID contacts on there. The first thing I did, because it was such a newer concept for us, especially in our conference, I had the NCAA staff come on to a Zoom call with us. I had all our, we call it GoToMeeting, but it's Zoom. Very, very easy way to name that. But they took their time and got onto a call with us and answered questions with us for about an hour and explained the role. We obviously had the resources from the ADID website on the NCAA. And from there, we got a chance to kind of said, hey, we'd like to meet at least once a semester with all our ADID contacts. We'll sign in. Every single school has a representative. Some of those faces have changed since we started this even a year ago. But we really didn't have quantitative goals, which was a little tough for some of my coaches, especially because they would live in that world from it. And even some of the non-athletics people who are on there, it was kind of nice to have something set in there. So we challenged our non-athletics staff members to find get into the athletics administration role. And for those who were in athletics, find someone on the campus side who really did some of the same work or could be a resource for them on the campus. And from us, using the conference office, I think put it in the minds of our athletic directors. Hey, this is going to be a role. This is going to be something that the conference is now step behind, our commissioners behind it. We need to maximize this role. And you need to have this person kind of as part of how you're interacting with your day-to-day, whether it's your athletics administrative staff, your senior staff, and then from a campus side, because our provosts were in on it as well, hey, let's involve athletics with if their ADID is on the athletic staff, have them utilize it. But we're still so very, very new into this that as we come to conferences like this and find ideas that we can bring back to our group, then we can start setting more and more, whether that's maybe more than once a semester, maybe this is another role that we can move into that we're doing a little bit more frequently and sharing ideas.
Good. Are there any other conference office ADIDs in the room? Can any one of you share some of the things that you started to work on with your ADIDs in the conference? Yes, ma'am.
Amber Thomas at the Centennial Conference. We meet regularly with our ADIDs. I want to say we started in 2020, and we actually started to bring our student athlete affinity groups. We have Athlete Coalitions and the Black Student Athlete Association, and we meet a couple times a year. We started working on programming and policy. We also have conference-wide initiatives that we all buy into. I think just the meeting portions help because that's where you get your ideas started. That's when you get the buy-in, and that's when they're able to take the things that you all are working on and take it back to their campuses and instill it. We created a student athlete inclusion policy in 2021, and that was just based off ADIDs meeting together, pouring into ideas, working on this document for a year, and then it released.
That's good.
Definitely power to be together.
Good. Anyone else want to share? Yes, sir.
So, Omar Brown from the Big Ten. So I would say we've probably been meeting for at least 2 years, 2.5 years together. And so it's been a larger group. We actually call it Diversity Roundtable. So it's anyone that's doing this type of work on your campus. Right now, we're formalizing it as part of our governance structure. And so it was voted on to be a DEIB committee. We're going to change it to Inclusive Excellence. And this will be exclusively ADIDs as opposed to Diversity Roundtable. It's a large group, but it'll be part of our formal governance structure that works with our ADs, our SWAs, our FARs. When we have our joint group meetings, this group and any of their ideas, proposals, updates will be shared as part of that. And really, they will feel like the conference will let the campuses really guide and push the conference to lead these initiatives going forward.
That's awesome. Anyone else want to share? Yes, ma'am.
Could I just do a group poll real
Sure.
quick?
Mhm.
I'm curious to see, I'm a conference commissioner for Division 3. How many of the ADIDs in the room actually work as an employee of the athletic department? Okay. And now raise your hand if you are outside the athletic department and have that designation. Okay, interesting. So in our conference, we are the latter group. Most, except for I think one of our ADIDs, all of our other ADIDs are from outside the athletic department. And when we first started getting together shortly after the ADID designation was voted in, I gathered this group, and I realized that as much, we're small campuses, and as much as I think folks had varying degrees of connection to athletics, they had a lot to learn about athletics. And that's why 6 of our 8 ADIDs are here today, because rather than me going to them with ideas, I really pushed for them to be, and they were loving it, they jumped in, to be here and kind of get immersed in it. I think it's so important that ADIDs are here when you're not part of the athletic department, to understand what athletics is about. So that was something we really, but we did a ton of work in the beginning with a best practices document that we have and a bunch of things. I'm really proud of what our conference has done. But the one, before I lose my train of thought, there was a point.
Well, we can come. I was like, we can come back to you. You'll get it. You just raise your hand, and we'll come right back to you. What conference?
The Allegheny Mountain Conference.
Allegheny Mountain Conference. Y'all stand up. Y'all commissioner just gave y'all a shout out. Allegheny. That is so good. That is awesome. See what I did? See what I did?
You gave her time.
Yeah, I gave her time. Come on. There you go. Okay. And I was just going to mention when I was in ACC, the core of the Committee on Racial Equity group, one of the things that you can do also from that conference office space is that group can get together and help move or shift legislation. So our core group was one of the first that helped delay the senior minority administrator designation at Division I. It was a Division I only, another designation, but we didn't feel like that was a good move. And so that core group got together with MOA, the Minority Opportunities Athletic Association, got together with Lead One, got together with the Black ADs Alliance, and we kind of helped shift that legislation to a space where it's right now delayed. We know it's going to come back on the books. We know it's probably going to come back up for discussion, but those are spaces where the ADIDs can come together as a group and help change or shift legislation at the NCAA level. So don't think of your roles as just being the person who's just educating on your campus, you can help change legislation as well when you guys come together from a conference office standpoint. So that's something I want to make sure that resonates with you. If you're in a conference office, you can look at the legislation and then get that information down to your ADIDs at the different campuses and help move and shift legislation within the NCAA. So Allison, in your role as Associate Vice President and Director of Athletics, what are you tasking or asking your ADID to do? Or are you the ADID?
I think right now, by default, yes.
Okay. So
Ideally, no.
So what are you telling your ADID hat to be doing on a daily basis in your department?
Yeah, I think it goes back to not being pigeonholed in terms of our leadership team or the expectations for how we're moving. We just talk about it as the culture of our program, and the culture of our program should be inclusive. The culture of our program should be welcoming, and not in a should way, like let's talk about the most recent thing in the news and check the box, but when we build out questions in our onboarding for how do we hire employees? Why we don't say fit, right? Because everybody knows how fit works, and somebody's just not a good fit, or you just don't get a good feeling. But how do we talk about how we identify those characteristics? How do we build out the way that we interact with each other in ways that are inclusive and not siloing? What's going on with our budget? I expect everybody on our leadership team to be informing with whatever they're bringing to the table, every aspect of how we're moving the big ship forward. So the task for the ADID is to put that hat on and say what needs to be said if it hasn't been said, but really it's the day-to-day of building out everything about how we're developing people in our program, that everyone should be coming to the space with that.
Absolutely. Other than Allison, Sean, and myself, who other athletic directors or senior administrators, not senior administrators, but if you're the director of athletics at your institution in the room, can you share maybe some ways that you're helping to maximize the ADID, or are you the ADID?
Yeah.
Okay. So put your, what are you tasking and asking yourself in that with that hat as the ADID?
So I've only been in my role for like almost 5 months. I've been going through this big transition, so I'm trying to maximize a lot of diversity to my students, trying to be there for my students, and like especially with the LGBT community, because I feel like they're like an outlier or like in the back end, and I'm trying to bring that out towards them to make sure that they're actually comfortable. So not only being there for my students, because I can say my university is very diverse, but just trying to bring a lot of the outliers and bring them to where upcoming, and that's basically what I'm trying to do.
Okay, excellent. I was on Sean.
You know,
Sean has a follow-up.
it's an interesting component. You know, I like the that's me. That's my deal. But you know, it's interesting because this role, and even with some of the designations, it's so easy when we talk about the pigeonholing, we talk about some of the other things. It's so easy just to kind of load up on the issues that are extremely complex, trauma-filled. You know, there's so much stuff that's involved. It's a high burnout rate, okay? And I found myself, this was my pathway into college athletics. I finished up coaching and then went into this kind of crisis management world around ethnic racial minorities, specifically dealing with crisis scenarios. So my position back many years ago at a unnamed public institution in the Northeast, I was that person dealing with these crisis situations. And my age, I was much younger, and I didn't know that this was not the norm, okay? So one of the things that I've learned as an old dog with learning a new trick, especially with my staff, is that I've got very energized people, and they can delegate this. This shouldn't be just one person dealing with these issues, because it will burn you out, right? So I have to shout out to my senior associate who's here. I've watched how she's been able to delegate some of the responsibilities, but more take the lead, but make sure that everyone's involved. Everybody has a hand in this work. And I think that's so important, especially when we have a George Floyd incident or we have something on campus or in the community that impacts what we do. It's so important not to be not it, and then unfortunately the ADID is the one brunting a lot of this, taking this home, dealing with the complex issues. That's a real big piece of where you go back to your administration, your staffs, or what have you, especially those in the athletic department, and to disseminate, that breadth and depth of, quite frankly, tough, complex work. I think if you're just that person dealing with the negative side, because there's lots more positive too. I don't want to make it sound like that it's only negative, but it's so important to be able to share that breadth and depth of complexity that happens. So that's a real thing that I watch, because you'll burn out, you'll flame out, and then you'll go someplace else, or you'll get out of the business, or you say to hell with it and move on. But at the end of the day, it's so important to make sure you identify that, especially in your one-on-one and those decision-making process, as well as making sure that this is very important. This is extremely important. You can't have that illusion of inclusion. You have to have some real breadth and depth behind the decision-making process and be very intentional in your strategic planning process that this is not an add-on, it's a part of the fabric of the operation. So that's a real big piece that needs to be done. So you're not, okay, you're the AD, or when this crisis stuff goes down, you deal with it, everybody else is in their office saying, hope that works out for you. That is not the intent. And I would argue that me as athletic director, my chair, I have to be in that and also supporting the role in a way that, okay, yes, you, Mr. Deputy, if you're not the ADID, you Mrs. Senior Associate, or whatever it is, everyone takes a hand of this. And that's such a critical point as a leader. So I just want to clarify that part.
That's great.
Could I? Yeah.
Got one question.
What she was saying about the job processes, I think that's something we could have a whole day on that. And you're so right about what you said about fit, because we don't have it defined in this ambiguous thing. But what we've been talking about is actually, instead of it being an ambiguous thing, making the process. So it's an acronym for finding impactful traits, because that's what you're trying to do in the job process. And also what that does is like, so now we have a position open. We define the impactful traits that we need in the position. Now as we're going through candidates, cover letters, and resumes, there's a lot of bias that's removed that keeps us out of these jobs a lot of times, because they need a certain this or that. No, we need these traits, because these traits are going to go and have us have that person be successful in the job. I think that gets lost, because just to what you said about, like, I wanted to ask this question, but let's all fast forward. What happens if the Supreme Court ruling goes one way? We all may not have jobs, so then we want to work in sport. What's the process for us to find jobs and then to finally fit is this ambiguous thing? So there's a lot of stuff interconnected, and we could have this conversation a year from now. We could be talking about a whole lot of things as well, too.
Absolutely. I had a question over here. Yes, sir.
To Director Fraser, to your point, that seems to be the gap that we're trying to find the bridge for. How do we get the buy-in from be it administration, presidents, provosts, ADs, into the coaches to actually, take these steps to, bring in the ADID and to actually embrace the DEI. We have this awareness that this work is needed and it's important, but we don't have a total across the board buy-in to actually do it. Like you're saying, hey, so is there anything out there that can help get the buy-in to actually make this have some progress?
Yeah, old dog.
Can I, before you go, yeah, well, no, because you got the answers.
Yeah.
But I want to,
hold on.
let's not be confused about who the expert is on the stage.
And then old dog, you
but I do want to amplify, to your point, something else that AD Fraser said, which is the idea of whose job it is. So when I'm not wearing the ADID hat, and y'all don't know me, I approach it a little bit differently, but if you're on my senior staff, I expect you to be the expert in that space. But at the end of the day, I have to wear the decisions. So sometimes in a crisis situation, the idea that, well, this is your job, so you handle it, you should probably be telling me it's my job, because people need to hear from the leader. And it's my job to create space when it's not my job to talk about it, or it's not my place, or somebody can say it better. But pushing athletic directors in that space, like, call somebody on the carpet. If you say that this is important, here's your opportunity. And so my expectation sometimes would be that an ADID, or that you should go to an athletic director, because that is where buy-in is. But sometimes I need to be the one that sends the email. Sometimes I need to be the one that holds the open forum. Sometimes I need to be the one to acknowledge those things, not because I'm the expert, but because I'm the one sitting in the seat.
Mic drop. You come on, you got something to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point.
Because you've been in the job long and you got multiple contracts.
I'm just trying to be like you.
So let me ask this question, because that was a really good question. Thanks a lot for asking the question. And it's interesting because it's different for everyone's institution as well as conference, right? But we're dealing with this space right now of changing names and doing different things. At the end of the day, the work is the work. We're going to have to deal with it. If you call it DEI, you call it professional development, you call it something else, the work is going to be here. No one's going to stop that from a legislative point. So that's number one. Number two, it has to come from a place of an intentionality. So that connectivity piece to my chair. Before I was the old head athletic director, I was the young gun in the trenches, right? And not knowing to be being groomed in this pathway, because at some point I really felt that my career was going to be more coaching related. I'm an old football coach, right? That was my passion. That's what got me in this track. But when I got to this space, I had a great mentor, and she made me understand that I could be more with my expertise in the things going on to help young people to throw the rope back over the fence and pull somebody else over. So that's my epiphany that happened. Part of it was that we had intentionality from the presidential level, the highest office, on down and up, okay? And I think it comes down to the fact that athletic departments right now, there's a lot of money in athletic department, a lot of coaches, a lot of issues going on. And when these types of issues, especially on the racial ethnic side, let me just use that one, right? It becomes this, we got to deal with the crisis. Well, if we have to deal with the crisis, we haven't put in things in place that mitigate that by virtue of trust, respect, understanding, education, all the things that we do. At first, we are an educator. That's the number one thing. Then we need to make sure that the connectivity, as we farm out these things and we deal with these crises, that we have people who are, quite frankly, prepared educationally. That's what I found out, that I was doing this work. I had no idea what the hell was going on. From a multicultural standpoint, from an understanding about critical race theory to understanding anything around people, I just wasn't prepared. I was not a really dark black man, as you can know. I'm a little bit of light skin, as my wife would say.
Lemonade.
And I'm sitting around the table.
Lemonade.
And I'm sitting around the table, and I'm being asked critical components and asked to solve an issue that my life experiences have helped me with, growing up in the inner city of New York and understanding the culture, specifically African American. I can answer that, but I could not answer some of the issues that were going on. So I had to educate myself. That was number one. Number two, is this something that we're just trying to put a Band-Aid on, or do we want to educate the masses, athletic department, campus, faculty, staff, community? So the linkage is having these critical conversations with your organization. And then you'll know right away if this is a Band-Aid approach or if this is something we really want to deal with. The issue of George Floyd is just one of many in our history here in America, okay? But what it did teach us is that it's pretty live, and it goes all the way live, and it's about human rights more so than anything else. Yes, there's a racial component of it, and there's criminal activity and everything else, but at the end of the day, the intentionality and be able to flip on a dime to make sure that we have trust and understanding and that the students have their voice as well as their staff. So it's all about bringing folks into that room and having those discussions, not when George Floyd incidents happen, but before it happens, and that we can have this ongoing onboarding of conversation. So I don't know if I answered your question, my friend, but it's about intentionality, trust, and respect. Those are the core tenets that needs to go way beyond before we have another, and we will, another issue that makes our, quite frankly, our United States as well as the country reflect on how far apart that we really are.
That was a question. Well, she had one, and then I'll come to you. Yeah.
So I'm outside of athletics, and I worked in DEI work for 14 years at my institution, and what I see happening here is the same conundrum that I see on the other side of the college institution, is that a position has been named, no parameters have been given, no teeth have been provided, no resources have been provided, and the people who are being asked to do the job look, represent, identify with the same issues, challenges, barriers, strengths that our student athletes are coming to us, and then we're going in front of predominantly, my institution is predominantly white, a white AD, and we're having to validate the work that we do at the same time as ask for the buy-in. And from the outside looking in, I see an entity with a lot of pull who could have probably maybe put a little bit more behind it to say, not just the role, but here's what we expect our member institutions to do in addition to the role. And I'm just curious, from an outsider, sorry.
No, you with us now. You in the room. You with us. Welcome. Welcome to the dark side.
Why did the NCAA just say, here, have a role, but there's no expectations to the role? I'm just
So I will say that when the ADID designation was first passed, each institution, and the NCAA has always been pretty much this way, to allow each institution to identify what that role would look like or that designation would look like on their campuses, because everyone is different. So you have all these thousands of institutions under the NCAA umbrella. So they give you the autonomy as the institution to make those make those decisions. So I recall when it first came out, I spoke with about 36 different institutions to help them understand what the role would look like. And I used one document, and that was from the NATAHE. That's the document that I started to say, here's how you can start to frame what other things this person should be doing, because most of the time it was an add-on to someone's role. So if you were already I was already doing travel and other things budgetarily wise at the University of Miami, and then the add-on of Chief Diversity Officer, because it was already a part of what I've done in the past. It was an easy flow for me. But I used the same document that I used in 2012. Well, it's updated, but the document I used in 2012 from NATAHE to help other institutional ADIDs frame within the athletic department what it may look like for them. So that's what the NCAA does. It doesn't give you cookie cutter, this is what everybody is going to do. They allow you to shift and make the position or the designation the way it fits that institution.
I think I appreciate that. I think the challenge is for those institutions that don't have that support, they're going to continue butting up against the same brick wall that diversity officers on the other side of the campus have butted up against. And so I think that opportunities like this and additional opportunities with the conference are going to be vitally important to this role as this role continues to grow, because there's institutions across the nation that don't want these positions. They don't want this work because they don't see the importance of it. They just need to have ticket sales. They just need to have the top recruits or whatever the case may be. So I just thought I'd say that, because from the other end, doing this work for 14 years, you will get burnt out. So you need to create these cohorts amongst yourselves, because if you're defining your own role and being asked to work your own role, you're going to find that you are frustrated often.
Thank you for that. So I have the young lady here, and then I'm going to come over to Reagan, and then Marquetta.
Thank you for calling me young.
Okay.
I look young, but I'm not.
You are so welcome.
I had to write down my question because it speaks to AD here and then the young lady here. When intentionality is no longer there or has never been there, how have you found a way to incentivize those that do not want to buy in? Coaches, others across campus, faculty. How do you incentivize it? One option would be make it part of a person's evaluation process. curious. I saw a couple of hands.
Yeah, I was going to say at the University of Miami, I got the coaches to buy in because I said this is a recruiting advantage. Let's recruit kids who want to be whoever they want to be. You want to be, if you're trans, you want to be whatever you want to be. You can come to the University of Miami and be whoever you want to be and play and do well. So I help the coaches frame it from a recruiting. How can I use this as a recruiting advantage? Because again, you got to get them where it matters. It matters about money. It matters with coaches about kids. That's where it matters. So you have to make the work. While the work in itself matters, we know that. You have to make it matter to the people that you're working with, and so. It's Jedi mind tricking, whatever you need to call it, to try to get them to understand what it needs to be. But it was a recruiting advantage for coaches. And then with the folks in external, it was how we can get more people to buy tickets in this specific community. But it was also about getting those people from that community inside of our stadium and to see, what else that we provided. So that was, I'm just giving you a couple examples of other ways we worked.
Yeah, I can, as the white AD. Frankly, I've been an athletic director at 3 institutions, and none of them have been PWIs. But I think that, which is an interesting mix in and of itself. But I think part of it is, to your point, it's the right business decision. The cliff to 2025 is here. Everyone has enrollment issues. NIL is going to take over. All we see in this generation of kid, I know they're not kids, right, is ownership and wanting to be a part of things and understanding their own identities. But that also matters across the spectrum. When we're talking about staff retention, when we're talking about attracting faculty, when we're talking about any of those spaces, everyone in this room knows that statistically and anecdotally, right, more diversity, whatever that looks like, equals more success. But from a bottom line perspective, we're going to continue to see that institutions that can't move in that way are not going to be attractive to students, and that population is dwindling. Your opportunities, the in-state, we're never going back. We don't know what it looks like, but NIL is here. The transfer portal is here. All of those things are happening, and those are, in my mind, real DEI issues around how we're building culture and how we're creating space. And so it's ultimately, in my opinion, also just going to be a business decision. If you can't move, your bottom line's going to see it.
That's good. Reagan?
And I was just going to make a point or a comment that now we have attestation on week 2 in November, right? And you'll have to go through all your touch points. We worked really hard from week 1 to give information to the NCAA as a DEI group, and then it was the NCAA also taking what they received out of different areas to get that attestation put together. But that's kind of going to be your roadmap, right? It's going to show you where you have blind spots, where you're doing really well, and then where you need massive improvement. So
And I think the attestation is only for Division I. Yeah, it's Division I. Yeah, I know, right? It was like Division I only. Good.
In November.
Marquetta, you.
Because the ADID role, ADID, or so is the SMA role, right? The designation comes from OIC. And I came on right as it passed legislation about 4 years ago. Can you hear me? No. A little louder. Please.
Use your coach voice.
As you can see, right? This is why I do not like to yell. So I am a coach, and this is the only time you hear me yelling is coaching and then this. But the ADID, this SMA roles come out of the MOIC, right? And I came on right when ADID was passed. And all excited, mind you, this is my 13th year coaching, but I've been an administrator for about 5 years, so pretty young in the admin role. And so for me, even with the SMA role, I'm like, oh, this is great representation, so on and so forth, right? And what I learned in that process is so much about the NCAA is it's literally membership driven. The NCAA does not do and cannot do anything that the membership does not approve of. And so what I learned in that process, the same questions that you had, I have, still have. I've learned so much from like Renee and Moa and talking about the SMA and all of that, right? And so if we want things to have teeth, that has to come from the membership. And so I thought when you talked about what you all did at the conference level as ADIDs and delayed the SMA, the ADID role started out with so many more teeth. But as you know, when things are tangled up, if you had kinky hair, I had a kinky hair growing up, and you pull that comb through, sometimes those teeth pop out. And so what happened in that process is combing through legislation, membership said, hey, well, we can't afford this. We don't want this type of accountability. We want to be able to govern ourselves. And that's when we lost the teeth. And I'm hoping and praying as that SMA role comes back up that you all in this room get together with your conference offices and don't lose the teeth. If so, we're going to be right back in the same place, and the SMA is going to be in the same room as the SWAs were 10 years later trying to figure out who they are, what they do, so on and so forth. So it's really up to us. My opening speech, I really meant that. It's really up to us in this room to not lose the teeth, to stand our ground, to say, no, this is what we need. This is the accountability that we're looking for. This is why it makes sense, both here and dollar cents, so we don't lose those teeth. And so, I have to give a lot of props to the NCAA because I had no idea the stuff that y'all had to do before I became on the committee. And like listening to all of the membership, giving them resources, so on and so forth, it's so important when you don't have the teeth. And it makes their work 10 times harder as well when you don't have the teeth. So I just wanted to stand up and say, please, as this SMA role comes back up, do not let it lose the teeth. Really push for the accountability, the guidance, the things that you in this room as ADIDs are doing already. Push for those teeth. Don't back down. Like, have a plan and a goal and strategy. Have those brave conversations with your ADs and your conference offices so that, again, we don't lose the teeth because we're not going back. What does that look like? What does that look like? I think it could be very, very beautiful, but if we cower, we shy away, which I don't think anybody in this room will do, but we have to make sure that moving forward, everything we do in DEI, we have to stand our ground and understand that it's membership driven, so it's going to have to come from the institution and the conference levels so that the NCAA can back it and push it and with all their mighty resources, push it forward. So.
And that's the chair of the MOIC speaking. So definitely making sure that she has your thoughts and as well. You had a question? Go ahead.
More of a comment. I think, hey, I'm Luan. Nice to meet you. I think similar to that point, what we're going to start seeing happen is the NCAA is going to start to has begun to operationalize the ADID. And so our individual campuses and conferences, we're we're going to be at a disadvantage if we don't put teeth to it, because the innovative institutions are going to start moving, and if we don't have the person, the resources, the information, we're slowly going to fade back, right? And so even if you have an AD or a conference commissioner that always talks about, I want to be innovative, I want to do this, I want to do that, we can jump on this train early and be with everybody else, or we can fade to the back, and eventually we're going to start losing staff, coaches, athletes, etc. And so the same way the NCAA treats the life skills administrators, for those who used to do life skills work, right? It used to be, oh, we're innovative, now it's just how we do business. And if you don't have it, it's very evident if you don't have a license for it. Or it's very evident now if you don't have somebody that's in psychology, right? A mental health specialist. Now the NCAA is starting to move to where, hey, we're not going to tell you you need this role, but we're going to act like everybody should have this role. And I think the ADID and the person doing this work is going to start to be in that same vein of, hey, we're going to assume that y'all should be doing this, and if you're not, it's going to be very evident compared to your peers and the people that you visit.
That's a good, very good comment. Naya, how we are on time? 2 minutes. So we'll end with kind of this last question to get you guys thinking where this ADID designation is going. We know that there were so many positions and popped up after the George Floyd. Again, the NCAA already had it in the legislative cycle for it to happen before George Floyd. So let's be clear about that. It was already in the cycle for it to happen, but most institutions didn't jump on it until after the George Floyd incident. So since that time, I've seen a trickle down of not making the work as important. Some institutions have kept the role, some have not. You don't hear a lot of talk about it anymore. Coaches not coming to your offices anymore, asking you, what are we doing? So from the panelists, and I'll give each one of you, you know what I'm saying, 30 seconds to kind of capsulize, where can this group now go? Where can they take their positions, their designations, and move forward in the athletic space from this point forward? So Marshall.
So I've got 3 of our ADIDs here from our conference. I'll probably go back and challenge them. Hey, what do you want this to be? If there's teeth that can be put in at the conference office level, tell me what you guys are wanting from our end to help the conference stand behind you and make this happen. And I think we talked a little bit about intentionality. I've got people from small staffs who their first purpose is to win games. So do we have to reevaluate how we're selecting our ADIDs like we do with our FARs, SWAs, where it's part of a job function? Because right now, I don't, just speaking generally, this is not a top priority for some of my ADIDs in our conference. Their top priority is to win games and keep their jobs. So I think just like the NCAA is member-driven, our conference is member-driven. I'm going to challenge our ADIDs, hey, let's put together some guidelines for this, and we'll stand behind you when we take it to the ADs, and this is how we can grow forward as a group.
It's a good piece. We'll get to you before we close out. I love the business case. You know, at the end of the day, we got to win championships. You know, I don't get to be an athletic director in 10 years at my institutions because my color of my tie. That's not going to work. It's about raising championships. It's about graduating students. So that is a really big piece. And the reason why I think we've been so successful at our place is because of the fact that the business case for ethnic racial diversity or diversity in general is job one. We're able to do things that other places can't do because of the richness of the diversity that we have on our campus and in our athletic department. So the business case on that is bringing those people in and having that a part of the process. So the ADID and the designation about that in the fabric, for me, everyone is an ADID on my staff. And if they're not, they're not going to be there very long. Because at the end of the day, it's about having the balance between. So I love the business case, my colleague said, because she's absolutely correct. But it's also about making sure that outcomes become extremely important and are academically and athletically have to be seen. Because the first thing I can tell you right now, if I'm not raising up championships, I'm not sitting here today talking about it. I'm fishing someplace, okay? And I think that that's why the designation is important, because it's going to make us all better.
I mean, yeah, you said it all. I think, and the designation, and just to take it one step further, right, making the case for that value at all of the tables that you sit in. So how are you connecting it back to, right, we're getting better student athletes who want to be a part of what we're doing. We're retaining better coaches, or we're retaining people that want to work in this space. Our social media and our brand looks better when it's integrated with what's happening and with what everyone's interested in coming up. So I think being able to position yourself in those spaces where it's not, right, it's in the fabric of everything that you do, but finding the spaces where you're not sitting yet, that you can be in a leadership position to tie in other places that aren't connected to athletics right now is going to be crucial.
Well, thank you guys. Oh, we have a comment over here?
I was just really going to say about the coaches comment, and I'm biased because I'm a coach. Every time I hear, and this has been for over a decade for me, every time I hear when coaches is the first thing is we got to win games. How? It's going to be, again, if you're not focused on DEI and letting your student athletes come and be their whole authentic selves, then you're not going to get those great student athletes. And that's, what I tell my coaching colleagues. It's like, even as ADIDs, like, you're in a space as an ADID and a coach to really connect with students, because there are student athletes who are leading advocacy on our campus. And so to be able to connect with those ADIDs in those coaches roles to help them connect those dots, that is sustainability in their coaching role. Because if they don't change and evolve, they are going to be left behind.
Great point. That's an excellent point. So thank you all. Thank the panelists, Allison, Sean, Marshall. Thank you guys for being so engaging in the conversation. And I'll turn it back over to Naya.